always has, always will. And, oh, well, what if we found people who were social entrepreneurs? There was no such word at the time, but we had the idea. Well, we need fundamental pattern change in human rights and education just as much as in steel and transportation. And, oh, well, that's an interesting idea. And then we thought, well, we could help. We could actually probably raise funds sufficient to help people get started in India because of this incredible difference in average per capita income. But the timing wasn't right in our lives or in the world, but the idea was there, and we kept working at it.
Which year would have this? And which year would this have been?
1963.
1963. Fantastic. And
so I could probably dig out pictures of the time with the Nova.
Oh wow!
And,
fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was a very deep and wonderful experience, and so if you understand where people are coming from, and what their experiences are growing up, you can pretty much predict what they're going to do. And that's one of the reasons we think it's so critical that every young child must master conscious empathy-based living for the good of all. 3 things that they have to learn to work together. And then that's the foundation for the other abilities that you have to have in an everything-changing and connected world. And then in the young teen years, 12, 13 is ideal, but it can be earlier. Critical that every young person has a moment in life when they know that they can be a contributor because they have had a dream and they have built a team and they have changed their world, their school, their neighborhood, whatever it is. And once they've done that, they know that they have what society needs. And they can put together teams and get knowledge and all that stuff. The old model of learning a set of skills that you then repeat for life is gone. And you can't live a good life by diligently following the rules anymore. They aren't there. This is a radically opposite way of living, and it's so much better. And this is what Gandhi brought. He understood that we were now at an advanced stage in this very profound revolution. And he showed the world how to get through the transitions.
So, when you talked about Acharya Vinoba Bhave and old Gandhi, you were obviously moved and touched by Vinoba ji in any case. And if you could recount at that time, what touched you deeply? Not necessarily theoretically, but what aspect of this man really hit you? And say, oh my God, what is that part of him? What would you say would be what touched you?
I think probably the best way to begin to explain is to describe a typical day, because every chapter is so amazing. The first thing which is amazing is you get up at 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, God.
I am not a morning person. And I found was very trying, but everyone was up, and then we would walk quietly across the rice fields along the dividers, mainly, And it was very quiet and very cool. And then the light would come up, and the group of constructive workers would stop and in silence hold hands and reflect. And then you would see coming from all around people in their best clothes with ribbons and children's hair, all going where we were going. You come to this next village focal point, and there's a palm arch, and there's a cacophonous bunch of musical instruments. And the next thing is just so amazing. Vinoba would have a prayer meeting only for children.
Oh.
No adults.
Wow.
Only for children.
Amazing.
And it worked every day. I mean, it was a connection. It's very hard to describe.
Did he tell you why he was doing that? Why was he doing this with only children? Did he share the reason?
Well, I asked, and he said he had many different, I think he had lots of reasons. But the one that sticks in my mind was that if you connect with the children, you've connected with the adults in a way that is very powerful.
Okay, that's incredible. This must have been a spectacular time for you. I mean, how old were you at that time? You were in 1963. I don't know your age, so I wouldn't know how old you were. It couldn't have been much more.
I was 19.
My God, what a profound experience to have at 19. To meet Vinoba.
Oh, the day is only beginning.
Yeah.
So then the constructive workers in pairs of two would go out to surrounding villages. And I really, there was a husband and wife duo, and the wife was the power, and the man was just sort of tagging along. And, you go into this village, you have these long structures, and she would sit down with the village, probably the panchayat, the village elders, and negotiate for a gramdan, village gift, which is what Vinoba was focused on then, which is a much more sophisticated version of the original Bodhan.
Okay.
And she would frequently succeed. And the laws then permitted this, that then the constructive workers would come in and restructure things really significantly. A very dramatic form of empowerment and development. And so then we'd walk back, and it would be pretty hot. So people would take a snooze, except I was asking certain people questions relentlessly. And I'm embarrassed about it because, I understood so little then that I'm sure these questions were naive, but it was always there. And then there'd be more negotiations. So you'd have the owner of the rice mill sitting in a little tea house in front of the mill with all these people around, and he would give up 25% of the profits of the mill. And then there'd be a prayer session for everyone and dinner, and then most everyone else would go to sleep, but I would be trundled off to talk to the school students. What do Americans have for breakfast? Etc. So now that was a typical day, and there were many things that were not typical, but that were I learned so much. So, in one village, I ran into a series of evidences that a tribal population was there, offerings to a cactus and various other things. And I saw these kids who were benefiting from affirmative action in the school. And I was saying to myself, this isn't how the arriving Europeans dealt with the indigenous peoples in America.
Mm.
This is very different.
Mm.
And it was one of 100 lessons about the tolerance of South Asian culture. So the fact that the culture is very knowledge-oriented was also something that was there all the time.
Oh.
But the fact that all these people, these families were coming from the hills, hunter-gatherers, maybe some little bit of agriculture, and they were coming to help with harvest, and then some of them stayed. Like, these are very, very different.
Mm.
And yeah, there they are, living in the village. And, I didn't know the culture well enough to be able to really judge. But I found that all these different types of people were very comfortable talking with me. Well, when you're a young person, it's easier to talk to. I think less prejudices. Anyway, so I could give you many stories, but I think I was absorbing the underlying culture. I had read a lot and had benefited from, Satyajit Ray's films came to New York, and I saw them multiple times. Okay. And music came, and the Indian consulate actually is in a building that the family had something to do with earlier on 64th Street, and I think, if I remember correctly. So I knew enough to begin to explore. And then people were just so friendly, accommodating, intelligent. And the Gandhian dimension, of course, I was completely fascinated with because of my civil rights engagement. Mm. I had seen it at work in the US context, and then to be able to talk to people who had really thought this through and who were living. So it was just people with values and values of universal, very important keyword, love and respect in action. And that's a universal phrase, but it's so much, it captures so much of what Gandhi stood for. And what he essentially is allowing us to help everyone get the power to express love and respect in action, to have a life.
Absolutely.